Hey guys, Corey here. I am so stoked today to be talking about one of my favorite things to talk about in terms of music, and that is my top picks for my piano sounds. All right, so I get asked this question quite a bit about what I'm using, what I like to use live in the studio, whatever it is, what sample libraries I use for my piano sounds. So I want to break that down for you today and just show you kind of my top five that I find myself using the most. They're definitely there's a couple that are definitely pretty similar in terms of tone, but some of them are, it's kind of a wide variety within those five. And then I'll briefly mention a couple other ones toward the end that are definitely worth checking out. But these are kind of my go-to top five that are built right into my recording template and live template the same way. So we'll go ahead and dive right in. So the first three are actually made by Native Instruments. And so these are going to be utilizing the Contact Player plugin. And I'm using Ableton Live. So just a disclaimer, I'm using Ableton Live for all of this. I know my buddy Ridge and Adrian and a bunch of the other guys that have done key stuff, they like Mainstage, use different stuff. It doesn't really matter. These are all third-party plugins and sample libraries, so they'll work with either or. So just giving you a heads up. But so yeah, like I said, the first three are made by Native Instruments. They use a Contact Player, and then one of them I'll tell you about here in just a minute. Actually uses the full version, the paid version. But the Contact Player is free, so if you get these libraries, you can just download the Contact Player and you're up and running. So the first one I want to show you is kind of my first one that's loaded into the template. So this is the Noir Pure library. So that when you buy the instrument, it comes with the Noir Pure and Noir Felt. So it's the same piano, but they actually put a layer of felt in between the hammers and strings to get this really warm, harmonically rich, soft, and dark tone out of it. That's really cool. But kind of my go-to stock piano is this Noir Pure. So you can see there on the screen what it looks like. The controls down here at the bottom. These are all pretty much the same controls you're going to find on any Native Instruments piano library or keys library. You've got the color, tonal shift, dynamic, and then you've got the two effects, the reverb and delay. So I'm not really going to dive into the effects today. That's in a different video. But I just want to show you what the piano sounds are and how I've got them set up. And so you have a good idea of what you're hearing on the records and what I do live, that kind of thing. So this first knob, the color knob, is basically like a tone control. So you think about a guitar player, turn their tone all the way up, it gets bright and more aggressive. You turn it down, and it gets real dark and kind of muffled sounding. It's the same principle there. So I've got mine just left, right at the default, right in the middle. Tonal shift is kind of the same thing, but when you turn it up, it actually kind of pitch shifts the samples down an octave, gets darker and more intimate. And then you turn it the other way and it gets more aggressive and a little bit more flat sounding. So I leave that right in the middle as it was actually sampled. But this dynamic control is one that I'll just talk about now, but this is something I utilize in all of the Native Instruments libraries that I have. It's basically the velocity that you play on a real piano. You think about playing really soft, the tone is darker and warmer, and then you play really aggressively, dig in a little bit more, it gets brighter and louder, obviously. But the dynamic control, it allows you to still play those same velocities, but actually when you're playing the softer velocities, it brings those velocities up in volume, so that if you tend to play soft, and I know this about myself, that I tend to play softer and less aggressive than maybe some other keyboardists do. I like to use this because I know that if I'm playing soft, when I'm playing soft, the volume is going to be a little bit closer to when I actually do decide to dig in a little bit louder and more aggressively. So that's useful. So turning that down to a negative value, I think I run mine at like minus 35 here, there. That gives me just enough of that volume increase on the lower velocities to kind of make up for me playing soft and still be heard in the down moments within the context of a full band. So that's a very useful feature. So again, that's all the native instruments have those controls pretty much. At least the color and the dynamic, the tonal shift, I think might be unique to this library. But this next tab is where I have a lot of fun with this Noir library. And so I'm not going to talk about all this stuff, but you can kind of see all these different controls about what the piano itself is actually sounding like and what they sampled. So you've got overtones, release samples, resonance. So if I turn the resonance all the way up, you'll actually hear, like, as I have the pedal pushed down, the piano resonating a lot more. Almost kind of sounds like a reverb, just really spacious 3D kind of effect. It's really cool. So I've got that blended in. This is exactly how I've got it set up in my template as you see it here. But one thing I wanted to talk about that's really cool and really vibey on this library is the mechanical section here. So you can see there's some controls, no on, no off. I've got it toward the no on a little bit. But what this is actually samples of when the hammer noise hitting the string, and like when I lift my fingers off of the piano, you'll actually hear the hammers kind of release and make this sometimes clunky sound. Really cool sound. So I'm going to play just this MIDI clip, the pre-recorded MIDI clip that I've got, that is just going to play through what this piano sounds like the way it is. And then as it's playing, I'm going to adjust that mechanical noise so you can hear exactly what that's doing. All right, so you can hear that noise, and it's really well recorded. Sounds like you're almost sticking your head inside of the piano almost. So just a really great feature that I take advantage of when I want something that sounds a little bit more realistic and maybe more intimate, like I'm sitting right next to the piano. I utilize that quite a bit. Another thing that I wanted to show you that's unique to this Noir library as well is the sub control. So they actually recorded these sub samples, and you can select the note here on where, if I play under that C#2, the sub samples start to kick in if I have it turned on. So I'll play that MIDI clip again, and then I'll turn it up, and I'll explain how I've used it before in a live context and how I think it's pretty useful. So here we go. All right, so that is a lot of low end when you heard me go down to the low part of the piano in that MIDI clip. But to me, that's a very useful control to have, because I actually played a stripped down worship set for Easter, I think, earlier this year. And it was just acoustic guitar, me on keys, and I think we had a cellist and a percussionist. And so we didn't really have a bass player, and I was like, man, it just feels like we need some solid low end somehow. And I happened to use this library, and then I remembered, oh, there's a sub control. What happens if I turn that on? And man, it just kind of brought the whole feel in the room to life. I talked to the front of house guy. I was like, hey, is it okay if I do that, send you some more low end because we don't have a bass player? He's like, yeah, man, it definitely needs something like that. Really cool feature to have in a piano library like this that you don't really find. And instead of using an EQ, you can use an EQ, but sometimes that can get a little muddy and sound a little funky, but that sub control, the way they captured it, is really nice. So, and then we've got this effects bank, EQ, compression, different styles here. You can run it through like tape emulators, that kind of thing, and some noise options there. So I'm not going to dive into all that, but it's there. It's great to be used, just finding your own sound there. But this last part, actually, I'll show you this real quick. The reverb and delay section is here too. Sounds great, but I actually use a bunch of other effects. So I don't use these real often, but the effects that are built in are incredible sounding. There's tape delays, tape echoes, impulse response reverbs that have been like captured in actual rooms and stuff in different parts of the world. So it's really versatile effects library there, but that's built in. So that's good if you don't know much about effects. This stuff is built in. If you have this library, man, you're gonna have a lot of fun with it. But this unique thing right here, the particles engine, is something that's really cool. So it's basically kind of like an arpeggio or arpeggiator, I guess, but it's a little bit different. So if I play a chord and just kind of hold it, this is what the piano by itself sounds like. Then if I turn this on, this is synced to the BPM of the session, the tempo of the session that I'm working in. So right now I'm at, I think, 82 beats per minute. So if I hold that same chord, it's just repeating those same notes, almost like a loop, but it plays wherever I move. Okay, so it moves up and down, really cool vibe. There's all kinds of different subdivision options. That was an 8th note, this is 16th. And you can change the actual sounds that it's triggering. So that was a mallet sound. I can click this and select, let's select brushes. Lot of different options to create some really cool in-tempo textures there. So this is the Noir library. Again, I showed you the pure library. They have a felt option as well. I'm not gonna show you that. It's laid out the exact same way. It's just a darker, more harmonically rich piano, okay? So that is the Noir. Spent a lot of time on that because I think that's probably my favorite out of all of them. But moving on, this is the Gentleman piano, whoops. So this is an upright, again, Native Instruments. This is an upright piano. I think it was built in like 1908, the actual one that they sampled. I'm not sure who made it, but the Noir, I don't think I mentioned, it's actually a Yamaha CFX Concert Grand, so a massive, really clean, open sounding, smooth grand piano. This is an upright, so kind of quirky tone, darker feel. And it sounds really smooth, kind of like the Noir does, but it's an upright. So it's got a different tonal characteristic, all the same controls in terms of EQ, tone, that kind of thing. And then you've got the hammer noise, pedal noise, overtones, release samples. A lot of the same stuff you see in the Noir library is in here as well. And the dynamic range here, again, I've got it set up the same way I do the Noir. One cool thing that I do appreciate about this library specifically is I can open and close the piano lid right here. Okay, so in my template, I've got it closed because when I'm playing upright, I like to feel like, man, the lid is just closed like I would at my house on my actual upright piano. A little bit warmer and thicker tone when the lid is closed. So that's what I have in my template, and this is what that sounds like just by itself. Okay, so really great upright piano sound. One of my favorites. I use this on a ton of different stuff. So really great sound. I'll play a little bit so you can hear what the lid is closed and then open. So that's closed, this is open. Okay, so a little bit brighter and more open sounding, but I prefer it closed there. One thing I do want to mention, you're actually hearing a part of another sample library. So this is actually not one that I use for the piano sounds itself, but just the hammer sound. So this is made by Spitfire Audio. It's their original felt piano, and I just turned the hammers on. I shut everything else off. And so the hammers by themselves just sound like this. Okay, so just that clunky thing that I showed you, the mechanical thing in the Noir, same kind of vibe, but they're not as loud in the Gentleman library, so I like to add that with the Gentleman so that when it's together, as opposed to without it. Okay, so it just adds a little bit more realism for me in terms of that hammer noise. So that's the Gentleman. And then my next one, I used to use this quite a bit. Still do, depending on what I'm working on, but this is the Una Corda. So this is actually made for the same recording artist as the Noir piano was recorded by. His name's Nils Fromm. This is a custom-built piano, prepared piano. So it's an upright, but it only has one string per note, which is a little bit different than a typical piano, where there's actually one string per note on the lower range. The upper mid-range has two strings, and then the higher notes have three strings that are smaller as you go up. This just has one, so it's got a very unique, really characteristic tone of just a quirky kind of prepared piano. So this actually comes similar to the Noir, had the pure and the felt. This has a pure, felt, and a cotton library. So there's actually 3 libraries in one if you get this one. So that's really cool. I use the pure usually just because it's the cleanest, kind of most approachable tone. The felt and cotton are really usable for like cinematic score, intimate type stuff, softer sounds. But I like the pure because you still have the same color, dynamic range, all that stuff. There's a couple things that are unique to this one though. There's this reverse button. So if I turn that on and play a little bit, you'll actually hear a reverse sample if I hold the notes. Okay, so let me turn that up a little bit more for you. Okay, and then I can actually set that to a certain subdivision. So if I'm playing that MIDI clip again, okay, so that's a really cool effect. And I've used that on a few songs just because, man, it's hard to get that reverse sound without doing a lot of post-production stuff. So having that built in is huge. And then you've got this harmonic section. So one thing that I love about this is I can actually turn the main piano library samples off. So this is what it sounds like just with the harmonics and the other noises. If I turn those harmonics up. So kind of a dulcimer type vibe to it that's kind of cool. But there's all those same noises that you have on the Noir, controls for all that, and then the same kind of EQ and effects there. So this is a super usable one for like more experimental piano library sounds. So that's the Una Corda. That's the last of the native instruments that I'm going to show you. This fourth one is actually another Spitfire library like that original felt that I just used the hammers. This is made by the same company, Spitfire. And this is the piano by Ólafur Arnalds, another recording artist who actually has worked with Nils Fromm, the other guy I mentioned, over in Europe. I'm just like super inspired by the stuff both of them do, and the piano sounds that they get are incredible. So this one is the felt grand piano. It's a older piano that he did the same thing as the Noir felt, just a completely different piano, a little bit darker and more intimate, warmer sounding than the Noir. There's not as many controls on this as you can see, but there's one that I want to show you. So I'm just going to play that same MIDI clip again, and then I'm going to turn this little spatial effect on. So this is like his custom reverb that he sampled for this library. So I'm going to play that and then turn it on and adjust the level for you. All right, so that's a really cool sound. It's really dark, really, really, really soft compared to the other libraries. But it's one that I really like to use for songs that maybe just start out with piano and maybe like a soft female vocal or something. Just has so much intimacy and vibe to it. So I really love this library. Not a lot of controls, like I said, but it just naturally sounds really wide, really great, really warm, and kind of in your face, but really smooth and tight stereo image. So I really like that. I don't use it as much live just because it doesn't cut through in a full band context. But it's great for recording. And again, I might use it live if it was just a really soft acoustic set with maybe just vocals and keys or something like that. But that's the Ólafur Arnalds Felt Grand. Okay, and that one, like I said, the first three, the native instruments, they actually utilize the Contact player. This one actually takes the full Contact version, so you have to pay for the full version of Contact to be able to use that library, unfortunately. So just keep that in mind. If you really like that piano and want to get it, make sure you invest in getting that full Contact version, okay? So the last one I'm going to show you is one that actually a bunch of guys here at Worship Initiative have used before. May look familiar if you've seen some of those other videos where they break that down, but this is the Virtual Grand Piano 3 by Vista. So this is actually another grand piano modeled after a Steinway B grand from, like, I think 1960. Yeah, it says there in the bottom. So this is a really great sounding, realistic stereo image. It's kind of like really roomy sounding, but it doesn't have reverb on it. It's just the way that it was captured is really natural sounding. So I like to use this for things where I just really want, man, I want to feel like I just walked in and sat down at a piano and I just want to feel like I'm right next to it. So this one, not a ton of controls compared to like the Noir and stuff like that, but there are some different presets that are useful. EQ setting, stereo width, tape saturation, reverb, and Hall. There's all that kind of stuff. I have most of that shut off other than the EQ, the mic position, and this mud cut, the lower mid-range can kind of build up, so I have that turned on. But I'll play that same MIDI clip and show you what this one sounds like. All right, so that one just sounds and feels like you're in a room with the piano. It's really great. It doesn't sound like they used really close microphones like the other libraries. So this one has a completely different vibe. It's super usable for recording and playing live if you're wanting that super, almost enhanced, realistic kind of sound. So that's another option. So that's kind of my top 5 go-to libraries. There's so many out there. There's different companies that make them. Waves has a couple. Native Instruments obviously has a ton. Spitfire Audio. All these different companies have them. I just want to give you a brief shout out to some other ones that I don't have in this video. I'm not breaking down in this video, but another one by Native Instruments is Oisha's Keys. So Oisha Keys actually has this Yamaha, I think it's a Neo C3 grand piano. Looks really cool, but it sounds incredible. It's great for pop, kind of more aggressive. It's an older library, so there's not as many controls as you would see on like the Noir or something like that, but it's very usable. I used to use that quite a bit in studio settings and stuff. I don't really use it live just because I have all these other options, but on this laptop, I have it at home that I record with sometimes, but great option. There's another one that I know the guys at Hillsong use a lot. It's called the Giant. It's actually another one made for Nils Fromm. It's a huge 2-story piano. So it sounds crazy, but the soundboard actually, it takes up 2 stories and you actually sit on the second level of where this was built. So they recorded that, sampled it, really huge sound, really aggressive, tight, high mid-range on it. But it also has this super low subby kind of feel too because the soundboard is so long because it's 2 stories high, all right? So that one is a really popular one with the Hillsong, and I think Bethel use those, so they're really great. I don't prefer the more poppy mid-range tone for a lot of the stuff that I record, but that's a great option if you're looking for that kind of Hillsong piano sound. Like Cornerstone, I know they use it on that one, and a bunch of other songs. So that's another great option. And then we also have one that I used to use quite a bit, not so much anymore. That's just the stock Ableton. It's just called Grand Piano. It comes if you have the standard or the suite version of Ableton Live. So I'm not going to break that one down. That'll be in a different video. But just know all this stuff that I mentioned, aside from that Ableton Grand Piano, all this stuff is third party. So you can use this in Ableton Live, Main Stage, if you're producing Logic, Pro Tools, all that kind of stuff, all those DAWs. So I'm so glad I got to go through with this, because I know you guys sometimes reach out and ask what we're using and how we're using it and how we get those piano sounds and stuff. So cool thing is we just launched our store online. So these packs, we're gonna have some packs of presets available for Ableton Live and Main Stage piano sound. So go check those out. You can buy our presets. Exactly what you see here on the screen and what I showed you and what you listened to is exactly the presets that you'll get if you check out those packs and want those exact sounds. If you have those libraries, you can download those and use and tweak them for yourself. All right, so hope this video was a benefit to you guys and was a fun kind of walkthrough breakdown of my top 5 piano sample libraries that I use. So hope you have fun with your piano stuff. If you got other ones and want to message us, let us know what you're using. If there's other stuff that you think I should check out, I would love to know more about it. But these are my top 5, and I hope you guys can get your hands on some cool ones and have your top 5 different options to use live as well. So that wraps it up, and I will see you guys next time.